crush your enemies.
They drew first blood, not me.
See them driven before you.
Oh, my user.
And hear the lamentation of your women.
But I pity the fool.
Glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate.
Phone home.
They're here.
Oh, real light sleeper, child.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in chronological order, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today we're discussing Paradise, released May 7th, 1982. It was written and directed by Stuart Gillard and released by New World/Mutual. Lead actors Phoebe Cates and Willie Aames had both auditioned for the lead roles of Randall Kleiser's Blue Lagoon adaptation years earlier. Aames was even allegedly offered the part of Richard in that film, but turned it down over concerns with the required nudity. Presumably, he only accepted this role, which technically involves more nudity, after Blue Lagoon proved wildly popular with audiences.
Would Phoebe Cates have been old enough to do?
I mean, she was at least as old as Brooke Shields.
That's true.
Well, she was actually old. She was 18 or 19.
She was 17 when they shot
She was 17?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then like Blue Lagoon would have been 2 years earlier.
Right, but Brooke Shields was also too young. That was the whole point, that they said they hired a body double to play her. The film has been described by many as Blue Lagoon in the Sahara, as a reference to a pair of more successful Brooke Shields films, specifically 1980's Blue Lagoon and 1983's Sahara.
But they never go to the Sahara.
That's what it's called. Production took place mostly in Israel, and specifically the Sea of Galilee, the city of Jerusalem, and a mosque near Tel Aviv. Cates was only 17 during production, and together with Aames, they approached producers Robert Lantos and Stephen J. Roth about removing some of the film's more arbitrary nude scenes. Cates has explained in subsequent interviews that because so many of the surviving nude scenes here were completely unjustified, they were much harder to perform than her famous topless scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which made sense to the plot and so was much easier to do. Producers pretended to surrender the point and then coordinated reshoots in Canada to reintroduce everything they'd agreed to cut out. Cates and Aames were shown a cut without the new footage and gave their approval, but when the new material was spliced in on the way to a theatrical release, Cates announced that she would not be promoting the film in any way. In fact, when Columbia Pictures stepped forward to file suit against the clear infringement of their rights to adapt Henry DeVere Stackpool's novel The Blue Lagoon, Cates offered testimony on behalf of the Blue Lagoon producers against this film. Aames, on the other hand, agreed to fulfill his obligations to promote the release, claiming to consider it a damn good film, and was rewarded for these efforts with a nomination from the Golden Raspberry Awards for Worst Actor, combined with his performance in Zapped later the same year. But the award was granted to Laurence Olivier for his turn in Inchon.
It's surprising back in those days that Phoebe Cates, standing up for herself as she did, would continue to have a career.
Yeah, like, and that he wouldn't, sort of.
Yeah, it seems like that would be like the famous Hollywood story of, I stood up for myself and they torpedoed my career.
Right, on her first film, she was willing to do that. The version we watched was the pristine Blu-ray from boutique label Fun City Editions, which I've brought up before on the show. It's a very small operation, but everything I've seen from their library has been consistently high quality. I highly recommend looking at FunCityEditions.com for more, including an upcoming slipcover Blu-ray of Breaking Glass, which we covered for a minisode on our Patreon. We're not sponsored by them at all. It's just, I like their work.
I mean, if they want to reach out.
Sure, yeah. This film opens with a caravan of camels marching through the desert under an epic score with the distinct flavor of Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven.
The music throughout this entire film is wonky.
Yeah.
Like, the score and then like these like musical interludes that happen are like tonally like all over the place and definitely don't fit what's happening.
Yeah. As the camera zooms out, we see the impossibly large walled-in ruins of the old city of Jerusalem in Israel. We see sheiks carrying British flags and escorting groups of young women through the city square. A title labels the scene Baghdad, 1823. A bustling marketplace is crowded with food and animals and visitors from all corners of the globe. We see a young Phoebe Cates as Sarah and her elder escort, Geoffrey, moving by the shops feeling very Jasmine and Agrabah. They're entertained by a passing fire breather, and Geoffrey cautions Sarah against interacting with the locals.
Oh, Geoffrey, don't be such a fuddy-duddy.
Your father paid me well to be a fuddy-duddy, and I shall continue to be so until I get you safely home to London.
A sheik named El Aziz, but who will come to know as the Jackal, approaches Sarah and compliments her beauty in another language. Another local, Haboosh, claims that Sarah is under his protection and that he should leave her be. El Aziz approaches the man and drops a handful of coins in his hand as if to buy off the man's protection. He drops the coins in the dirt. When El Aziz leaves, Sarah thanks Haboosh for his intervention, and he explains that Sarah's father did a lot of business here for the British East India Company, and they were good friends. Haboosh informs them that El Aziz, or the Jackal, is a slaver in these parts, and the coins he just offered were an effort to purchase Sarah. He advises them to always be on the lookout for trouble, and only now does Sarah realize that the nearby shouting is a crowd of men bidding on more women for sale. Among the crowd, we suddenly see a curly-haired young man named David, played by Willie Aames. The girl currently being auctioned off looks understandably uncomfortable with the process, and one of the men running the auction forcibly tears off her top. David removes his vest to cover the girl's nudity, and the Jackal punches him to the ground for the intrusion. David is quickly helped up by very Amish-looking parents who agree with their son that this auction is an affront to God. Haboosh is looking to hire another caravan to lead his friends the rest of the way to Damascus, but the vendor, Bashi, insists the price will have to include a contingent of guards. Packing up their camels, Haboosh finds a book labeled Dr. Han's Medical Journal. Geoffrey says it belonged to Sarah's father until his recent death of cholera. Across the square, we see Sarah laughing at a trained chimp that hops for her a few times before leaning in for a hug and kiss. These are the same chimps we saw last season climbing all over Bo Derek in 1981's Tarzan the Ape Man. David's father, Reverend James McBride, sees Haboosh assembling the caravan and asks if his family might tag along. At a discount rate, of course.
We have some money. Not much. The people of God are not always able to give.
It's almost like he doesn't like you. He's not giving you any money. It's weird. They insist the favor would be an act of Christian charity, somehow forgetting where they are.
It would be an act of Christian charity.
Oh, yes. We Muslims have always been very concerned with Christian charity.
Geoffrey seems to approve of the additional travelers, and they all set out for Damascus together. The Jackal watches them ride away from the top of the town walls.
If this is 1823, you said?
Right, yeah.
It's interesting that Geoffrey, because I'm assuming he's British?
Right, yeah.
So he could have been alive during the Revolutionary War or even fought in the Revolutionary War.
Potentially,
against the United States. So you think he'd be like less likely to want to help the Yanks?
Yeah, come on over, yeah. A few days' ride into the desert, they stop for food and a night's rest at another walled-in city. In the night, David follows the sound of men's wolf whistles to a belly dancer mid-show. He's hypnotized by her gyrations, and eventually she approaches him and pulls him into the dance, but he gets nervous and runs away from the display. On his way back to his family, he notices through a small window that Sarah is bathing in private. He peeks through the billowing curtains as she scrubs her back for a moment, but then steps away before he sees any more when he hears his parents repeatedly calling for him. When he finds his parents, David's father informs David he will be a minister when they get home to Boston because it's God's will. The Reverend is briefly confused by the arrangement of the constellations overhead, but David assures him they must just be taking an unusual path to Damascus. The next morning, the camp is invaded by the Jackal and his warriors, who lay waste to almost everyone inside. The Reverend takes up a sword and unleashes a battle cry.
Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord! Ah!
But he immediately takes a spear to the belly and collapses. His wife rushes to him as he bleeds out on the ground, and another of the invaders drops a scimitar on the back of her neck to kill her instantly. I can't tell if this is the actual Jackal doing it or just one of his men.
Right.
David rushes to them both, but vibrates in shock as he dirties his hand in the blood of his parents. He spots another swordsman chasing Sarah and tosses a big pot of boiling water at the man. Haboosh urges David, Sarah, and Geoffrey to climb down the city well, which has a secret cave on one side at the bottom to hide in. When they emerge from the well hours later, everyone in town is dead. David holds a short funeral for his parents. The three set off for Damascus on their own, with a single camel for the three of them. Geoffrey leads the way on foot, and they basically walk this camel in a random direction, hoping to hit Damascus, but failing that, they will eventually reach Alexandria.
But looking at some maps, I was like, hold on. There's a lot of stuff in between Damascus and
was there in this time?
Well, because Jerusalem would have, and like the entire Israeli coast would have, it was Palestine at the time, but there would have been cities and things like that to run into. You would have hit the Mediterranean before. I feel like.
Yeah, and that's why Sarah says if we're going to Alexandria, it's going to take us months. That's like hundreds of miles away.
Well, I did some Googling, and if they left the trip from Baghdad to Damascus, if you set Google to walking, and it taking the straightish roads, it said it would take...
It says you'll go through about 3 camels.
Yeah. It says 186 hours of straight walking. So I parceled that out to 8 hours a day. So about 23 days it would take to if you just walked 8 hours a day.
That's crazy.
But that's just Baghdad to Damascus.
Right. They stop for a moment near an enormous underground cave, and David calls their attention to a natural warm water spring he's discovered inside. Geoffrey turns to collect the camel to water it, but passes out from exhaustion. Beside a campfire that night, Sarah flips through her father's medical journal for advice on how to treat Geoffrey. She laughs at the illustrations of nude figures, and David reminds her that viewing nakedness is a sin that we've only seen him partake in twice already.
So how old are they supposed to be? Like not
teenagers or like
they're
early
in their teens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the way she acts sometimes, it feels like she's supposed to be playing much younger.
Yeah, like laughing at naked drawings.
She's like, "You sure look funny." It's just like it's something like a little kid would say.
Well, that's because she's playing Brooke Shields in Blue Lagoon. She's not playing an actual character in this film.
That's true.
Well, Adam and Eve were naked.
They were not. They wore leaves. Big ones.
How do you know? Were you there?
No, but I've seen lots of pictures in churches, and they always wore leaves.
Isn't there a whole section of the Bible that talks about when Adam and Eve ate, from the forbidden fruit, that they then understood their nakedness? And
there wasn't sin before that. That was the whole point.
But I'm just saying, he should know that they were naked, that they weren't wearing leaves because
there was no sin yet.
Also, whenever I've seen depictions of Adam and Eve with the fig leaves, it's only over the crotch. It's never over her breasts.
Yeah.
She's not wearing a fig leaf bra.
Yeah. She's not the Little Mermaid. The next morning, David goes hunting with a slingshot and manages to kill a rabbit. Returning to the cave, he rushes back to sinning by spying on Sarah as she showers in the warm water spring.
If you were wandering through the desert and you had a source of water, would you bathe directly in that singular source of water? Because I feel like I would not. I feel like I would take the water out of that area and wash myself.
No, I would just bathe right there.
I would not want the ickiness of me getting into that water source.
Oh, I want my ickiness all over everybody's shit.
I would assume that you would just continuously feed, refill containers from the streaming in and not the pooled up water.
I guess.
But I agree. I get what you're saying, that you're kind of contaminating, but they've already let the horses and camels drink from it.
Yeah, I guess.
So it's
But also you want the feeling of a shower, and you can't have someone hold a bucket over your head the whole time. They spend one more night in the cave while Geoffrey recovers, and the next day on another hunt, David spots another Arab camp nearby. Geoffrey offers to ask the camp for help in their travels, but when he doesn't return, David follows him discreetly to see what happened to the man. He finds some of their things in a tent and steals a bow and arrow, but on his way out of town, he crashes headlong into Geoffrey's corpse, hanging upside down with his throat slit.
I feel like this is implying that they're going to eat him.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, if you're in the desert, I guess, waste not, want not, but seems like that's what they're implying here.
Yeah, it would have made more sense to me, I think, if the blood had been running up his face, if they hung him up and then slit his throat.
Yeah.
But the blood is actually going down his shirt, which makes me think they killed him when he was standing up and then hung him up. Which, if you're doing it for meat preparation, he would be upside down because you want the blood to go.
You want the heart to
out
pump
of
the
him,
blood
away
out.
from them. Yeah.
Also, if this is a camp or a place that they make camp on occasion, it seems that they would know about
nearby water.
Nearby
they would know
water,
about
cave
the
springs.
only shower that occurred in nature.
So I thought it was strange that they never came into that cave.
Yeah.
Unless there are other sources of the hot spring.
I mean, we're going to find out there's water everywhere in this desert.
Yeah, they don't know about that cave, but there's a really great place to pee right above that cave. That's why it's so warm.
Well, at least the dirt has filtered it.
No, it's straight down. They're peeing right on these people.
It's just steaming. And this is the desert.
That's weird. It's dark yellow today. You guys are not
dehydrated. It's the
guys
desert.
Are not taking good care of yourselves. It is sweeter though.
You're saying they need to get checked for diabetes or something?
I think this cave ate asparagus yesterday. He rushes back to Sarah to inform her Geoffrey has been killed and they need to leave now. They ride the same camel several more days into the desert until the camel is on the brink of death and can't take them any further, but by sheer chance they've run out of gas right beside an oasis with a large body of water. It looks like an ocean, but it's supposed to be an oasis.
I just wanted to mention that we do confirm that this camp of people was the Jackal's camp.
Right.
Because he rides back and he's talking and he says that Geoffrey had led them on a wild goose chase. Like
right.
he had with his dying breath gave them wrong information
about where the other two were hiding.
Exactly.
Right.
So I just want to know that Geoffrey went out, a hero.
Yeah, and they're even impressed by that. Because it seems like maybe they tortured him to death, and they're like, oh, I guess he died a braver death than I realized. David follows Sarah into the titular paradise to an enormous waterfall. They strip down to their underwear and start a splash fight in the water, which is broken up when David realizes he can see through Sarah's clothes and suddenly stops playing to just stare at her.
This area, it looks straight up tropical.
Right, yeah.
Like not an oasis. There's no sand anywhere. Everything's lush and green.
We do a time jump to David and Sarah having apparently decided to just live here on this beach for keeps.
Mitch Hedberg, if you're ever lost in the woods, fuck it, build a house.
Yeah.
I was lost, but now I live here.
They're both dressed in handmade bathing suits, and we see Sarah playing a handmade flute in her handmade beach house, but we explain quickly how all these things came to be.
Where did that come from?
I made it.
You made it? It's great. I didn't know you could make things.
Well, you made this house. I didn't know you could make things either.
So we've established now that they both can just make things magically.
I have a hard time. So like this house, it's not just like a lean-to with some palm fronds.
It's got a porch with a deck.
It's like
stairs.
Raised foundation, stairs. It's got a porch swing. It's got furniture. There's curtains. It's got everything. Now
they have Wi-Fi.
They had just what
Wi-Fi.
was like fit on this camel's back, and they've had to leave in a hurry multiple times.
But this is 6 months later or something. We don't know.
Is it?
It has to be.
I have a hard. Okay, I have some questions about our timeline then.
Right.
I mean, first of all, their hair never changes throughout this entire movie.
But they're also doing micro cuts. That's where you cut it every day to the same length.
And she shaves her legs every day
to the same length.
But I guess
was not a thing in 1823.
We'll get to it in a minute. My biggest problem with this timeline shift was we built a house and he still hadn't used the bow and arrow.
Right.
Yeah, I was real upset by that.
Yeah.
When he goes to practice, it's like, let's try this thing out. It's like, what do you mean try it out?
You've built a house for the last 6 months and you haven't tried this thing that could defend your life if these bad guys show up?
Like,
and they've been after you the whole time?
Yeah. And like, what have you been eating? Like, I figured you'd be an expert with hunting.
Right?
At it. Getting back to the house, like when I saw all the stuff that was inside, like blankets and
beds and tables.
At least with like Blue Lagoon, all the stuff that they have for their like house, and they had chests from like the ship.
Right. But their chests got stolen at the last stop, so they don't have anything.
Right. Yeah. And so they had like what would fit in a couple of bags on the camel's back. That's it. And I would, if I were them, have those bags mostly full of water or food.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, when I saw, like you said, the raised foundation, I was like, what? No, that's not happening here.
The porch swing did me in, with a nice cushion and blanket on it. Like, what the hell?
and getting back to your point about the music, because the music goes like full Gilligan's Island.
Right.
With like, just like.
Suddenly it's a sitcom, yeah.
Yeah, it does. It feels like a silly TV comedy. And this is right after we saw their protector strung up at this camp dead. I'm like, this is not the right tone.
Yeah. Sarah hears a concerning noise outside the beach house, and David offers to investigate and finds a chimp on the beach eating some of their leftovers. They decide to keep the chimp and name him Doc. Sometime later, we see David practicing archery against a target he made that looks suspiciously like Jesus for a devout Christian to be shooting at.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, why is he shooting at Jesus?
Lucky for Jesus, David can barely fire a single arrow. He can't even, knock it. He's, literally just dropping the arrows without firing them. Elsewhere in paradise, Sarah washes in a pond and suddenly and without motivation whips her tits out to play with. But then she stops when she notices Doc the chimp is spying on her.
Not just spying.
He's
mocking
laughing
her.
and playing with his own tits.
Yeah, he's mocking her.
Ape tits. Back at the beach house, Sarah fidgets with her breasts some more in a tight top and asks David if he's noticed any change in her body.
Do I look any bigger?
Taller, you mean? Maybe.
No, not taller. Bigger.
Oh, you mean fat?
No! Forget it.
She angrily storms back inside. David is clueless what he's done wrong and turns to the camel and chimp for support in his confusion. That night he goes fishing naked with a net.
Where'd he get the net?
Yeah.
He made it.
But it's like a full-on net with like the little floaty bobbers.
Yeah.
It's like, what? What is your skill set back in Boston?
You didn't know he could make things?
That you know how to make nets
out of random bits of stuff you find in the desert?
And yet you can't knock an arrow. After he's passed out in bed that night, Sarah is flipping through her father's medical book again and pulls back the blankets to compare the sleeping David's genitals to the drawings in her father's book.
Seemingly unimpressed, she goes back to sleep.
I've seen bigger.
I guess the book adds 10 pounds.
To the
That's a huge dick. The next morning, David steps out to find Sarah climbing a palm tree and tossing coconuts down to the sand. It seems today he's noticing her body in the way she wanted him to yesterday.
What are you doing climbing trees? Where's your modesty? What? It's not nice. People might see you.
What people?
That's not the point.
Which is all part of the time-honored patriarchal tradition of getting mad at people for making you horny. He tells her she shouldn't be gathering food because it's a blasphemy against traditional gender roles, despite the fact that in hunter-gatherer tribes, women have historically been assigned as gatherers. Even David realizes this whole rant was stupid and pointless, and as he showers nude in the waterfall later, he berates himself for what he said to her. Sarah wanders up and listens to David as he mocks himself, and then laughs before turning to leave because she's not a pervert who just watches naked people anytime they're naked.
She waits for them to be asleep.
No, she was just curiosity, biological curiosity. Sometime later, David is resting on the beach and Sarah puts a lizard on his chest as a prank. He chases her to another pond where they wrestle in the water for a while. That night, she bathes again in the waterfall, and when David finds her here, she says she's been having stomach pains, which seems like a half-assed retread of the Blue Lagoon scene where Brooke Shields' character has her first period without ever having been taught what they were. But the difference here is that Sarah is clearly at least 17, and she knows what's happening to her.
Well, but they also never overtly have her discover her period. She just says stomach pains, which could be literally anything.
But then take the scene out. If it's literally not the scene of her having her first period and suddenly learning this, then it's like this serves nothing in the story. The next day, Sarah and David have carved a hopscotch track in the sand, but the game is interrupted when the chimp Doc takes a seat beside them and starts jerking off at them.
More jaunty music.
Yeah, it's just like so many things in this movie, like all the way up until sudden like beach shack. I was like semi on board with this movie. Like it's like okay, like fight for survival out of the desert. It's pretty like it's like fine. But once it takes this turn, and it just gets so goofy and weird and just like, yeah, sure, the chimp's going to jerk off for a little while, and that's going to be what the movie's about.
It'll be hilarious.
David, look at Doc.
Hey, stop that. Stop. Sarah, don't look. Come on, don't look. Doc, get out of here. Go on, get out of here.
Sarah thinks it's hilarious, but David doesn't think it's a joke. Sarah says, according to her father's book, it's natural. But David says, according to his father's book, masturbation is evil and makes people crazy. Later, we see him practicing with the arrows again and finally hitting his target once. David goes out on another camel patrol and spots the Jackal. He rushes back to the beach house to warn Sarah so they can pack the camel to leave, but Sarah is distracted, worrying where Doc's run off to, and the camel escapes with all their stuff. David screams at Sarah for causing all this.
David, I'm sorry.
You're sorry? The only reason we're in this mess is because you were flirting with that guy in the marketplace.
David, that's not fair.
Fair? He killed my mother and father, he killed Geoffrey, and he'll probably kill us, so don't tell me about fair.
If he just kills me, I'll be lucky.
Sarah and David hide out in some nearby tall grass and watch from a distance as the Jackal and his men tear down their beach house, while Doc tries to pelt them with coconuts from high in the trees. Doc scampers off and helps a second chimp escape from the Jackal's caravan. They both hide with David and Sarah in the grass.
So they've been chasing her with a monkey?
Apparently. Okay. Or they stole it from someone else on the way here.
It's weird. I also think it's weird that they've spent the last 6 months wandering the desert after this
Just
girl.
looking for this one girl.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, it's Phoebe Cates. I get it.
Yeah, that's true. Later on, I make that point in my notes. I was just like, I would feel like these guys, his men, the Jackal's men, would just turn on him at this point. Like, we have spent so much of our time, and we should be like raiding caravans and doing all this other stuff because that's what we do. We're just like spending all this time getting a girl. You can get any girl you want right now.
It's like, yeah, but you guys aren't going to understand until Gremlins 2 comes out what I'm going for here. The Jackal finds David's arrow target and recognizes the illustration as himself. He sets fire to the ruins of the beach house and leads his men away back into the desert. Eventually, the camel returns with most of their things, and David promises to rebuild the beach house.
I feel like they had to have the camel run away so that there was the concept that they had anything left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know why else this happened, but otherwise, everything would have been burned and they'd have nothing, which I thought would be more interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's the only explanation for why they're able to rebuild in the first place, is because the camel took stuff to safety. We get a funny little moment of Doc here holding the bow and arrow, and the girl chimp has a fruit on her head as if they're going to perform a little William Tell act. Next, we see the chimps hopping through the hopscotch course on 1 foot each. At sunset, Sarah strips fully nude to go for a swim in the ocean, and we get a lot of Blue Lagoon-esque footage from underwater of her nude swimming. Sometime later, we see David has built a sled for them to ride down the sand dunes. They laugh together at the bottom of a dune, and David sees an opening to go in for a kiss, but Sarah says she's not ready. He claims she doesn't like him in return because she's too obsessed with her father's medical journal, and he races back to the beach camp to tear out its pages and toss them in the fire. When she tries to wrestle the book away from him, he reels back and hurls it into the ocean, blaming his insanity on all the masturbation he has to do in the absence of her affection. Later, we see David do some spearfishing and more underwater footage. When he emerges from the sea, the chimps lead him with some urgency back to the new beach tent, and it's been torn down again, and Sarah is gone. David deduces that the Jackal has returned and kidnapped her.
Of course he has. It's the only place that they know that
they know where you live.
Why would you rebuild it here?
We cut now to the Jackal's camp where he holds Sarah hostage. He orders her dressed more fancily before she's presented to him again. David sneaks down to the Jackal's camp to rescue her. He finds a crowd of women redressing her against her will and sneaks in wearing a full niqab so they don't recognize him as an intruder. He kneels to the floor and somehow doesn't feel a scorpion climb onto his hand and then up his arm. When he finally notices, he shouts in shock and Sarah recognizes her rescuer. He throws a clay pot at the first guard to arrive like he's fucking Link. And then he drags Sarah away by the arm as their chimps yank random ropes to collapse the remaining tents of the camp and buy them more time. Somehow it doesn't occur to David that he was stung by a scorpion until hours later, and the moment is played like when Brooke Shields stepped on the rockfish in Blue Lagoon. David seems on the brink of death throughout the night, and Sarah prays for his recovery. I at least appreciated that she mocks him appropriately in this desperate moment for destroying all their medical knowledge during his horny tantrum.
If only we had the book. Oh, I shouldn't have made you angry. I'm sorry.
It wasn't you, it was me. I was crazy and now I'm gonna die.
No, you're not.
They ride the camel to another of the desert's apparently bountiful bodies of water. This is like the fucking land of 1,000 lakes. What is going on? Why is there water everywhere?
And never once has the concern for like food or water been a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like the whole point of setting this in the desert as opposed to a tropical island was to add that level of scarcity to being an element of danger here, and it really just hasn't been a thing at all.
Right.
And this new area that they're in is clearly man-made.
Yeah,
all the waterfalls
walls,
are fully even. They're the exact same line.
There's ledges, there's doorways, there's staircases, and there's no people.
That's what I'm saying. Like, why is it that the Jackal keeps making all his camps like
in the sand,
in the middle of nowhere versus all these places where there's clearly no one else?
Yeah, instead of burning down the beach house, they should have moved into it and been like, "This is our camp now. I dare you to come home." When David seems fully recovered, Sarah leads him to the water and guides his hands to grope at her body, claiming she's changed her opinion about being physical with him. Next, we see them sitting naked beside each other for a moment, and eventually they lay down together to make love, and here's where I think most of the body double footage is getting spliced in, with a lot of ass-grabbing and nipple play. The next day, they're skinny dipping together when they go for a quick swimming excursion, and they're suddenly passing through an entire coral reef populated with tropical fish in this oasis in the desert.
I lost it at this point. I think I called you into the room, and I'm like, what is happening? We're in the desert. There's a bit of water, and suddenly it's a deep tropical coral reef with lots of fish. This makes no sense.
It's one of those desert reefs that you hear about all the time.
You're always hearing about
nonsense.
We dissolve now to Doc fishing at the side of a pond, and as soon as he gets a bite on the line, he drops his rod in the water and the fish gets away. His fishing rod, I should say. He's not jerking off again.
It could go either way with Doc.
Doc's crazy. He's not a real doctor, by the way.
He read that book at least twice.
Yeah. That night, you'll never guess what David and Sarah do. More naked swimming. Later, she's cooked up some food for them, but it's too spicy for David, and he has to tap out. She's cooked it up in a big steel, like an iron pot in a kitchen that they built.
Again, where did all this stuff come from?
What is happening?
And make it too spicy?
Where are the spices? Where did those come from? I mean, like, yeah.
Also, what is this that's too spicy?
Grill one of those fish you got, but like, what spice?
Yeah. The next day, they have more sex, this time on land. Later, Sarah says she wants a break from swimming and points out that one of the chimps is pregnant. I thought it was going to be like a hint that she doesn't like swimming, or that he's like, oh, why do you keep saying you don't like swimming? That's like 3 days now that you said you didn't want to swim, and they never explain why she doesn't want to swim.
I mean, I think that's the point, but they don't do a very good job.
Right. A few days later, the baby chimp has already been born. A few relatively uneventful scenes later, the Jackal has found them again, and they scramble to escape again.
Okay, and this time, from this location...
Right.
They legit, he's like, oh my God, they're coming. He grabs her and they book it. Like, just run.
Yeah.
By themselves off. The camel's standing there. No saddle on. Saddle sitting on the ground next to him. And they're just gone. Cut to, they're riding on a fully packed camel in the next scene.
Yep. How did you do this while running? In their haste, Sarah leaves behind her golden locket necklace. David races the camel through the desert full speed until it's frothing at the mouth. One jump cut later, the camel is now dead in the sand, and they have to carry all their things and walk from here.
I'm bothered by the fact that I think that they actually had a dead camel here.
I think they put foam on his mouth.
And made him lay down still and not move? Maybe trained
I don't think they
guess.
ran it to death.
Well, I don't think they ran it to death. They're just going to kill it in some way, because, like, I don't think you could just get a camel to lay on its side.
I don't know. I haven't tried very hard. David decides he can't run forever, and he asks Sarah to wait with the chimps while he turns to face off against the Jackal by himself. But she's waiting like 10 feet behind him. So it's not really like she went in a different place where she was safer.
Yeah, well, I mean, where would be safer anyway?
Right.
It doesn't matter.
We're back to the other part of the desert where it's all just dunes as far as the eye can see.
It's just sand.
It's important to note that the Jackal has told his men to wait behind.
Yeah, you guys wait behind. I have to do this by myself.
Yeah, and I'm sure his men are like, we're leaving, right?
Yeah, if he doesn't come back,
this guy?
yeah. What is the rule for like a professor? Like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
If he's not back, we get full credit. We're going home. We've chased Drop Dead Fred enough through this desert. Soon the Jackal appears as a shimmering mirage on the horizon, and as he gets closer, David pulls an arrow from his quiver. The Jackal waves a sword in the air as he approaches, and David fires arrows desperately at the approaching warrior. The first 2 shots fall short, but a third lands firmly in the Jackal's throat and knocks the man clear off his horse.
I did not feel like we established that he would be good at this yet. Like,
no, because he hit the target once.
We saw him hit it once, and it seemed more like an accident than anything else. And that was a target like 15 feet in front of him.
Yeah.
This is a moving man on a horse.
Yeah. You have to hit it a lot harder than a piece of leather.
Yeah.
The Jackal is dead, though, and Sarah and David can finally move on without fear of being followed. Another few days of desert walking, and they come to a stretch of ancient Roman aqueduct and water beyond it, which we've actually seen before on the show. Do you guys recall the last time we saw this long stretch of stone archways built along the water's edge?
I do. Do you remember, Richard?
I think I do.
Okay, go for it.
The big red one?
Yeah.
That's right. They can see a city from here, and as relieved as they are to be safe, Sarah's worried they will cage the animals. She also chooses here to reveal that she's pregnant, and the baby has just kicked her for the first time. To make the decision easier, Doc, his girlfriend Evie, and the baby all march back into the desert to avoid cages. They'd rather be dead than in a cage.
Bye.
It's better this way. This is where they belong.
No, it's not.
Chimps are not native to the desert.
Desert animals.
They are not cactuses. They're apes. What are you doing?
Also, when they see the city, it's like, oh boy, we're going to be able to eat everything we want and get chocolate. It's like, you don't have any money.
Yeah.
You still need money to buy things.
Your parents were poor when they died. You can't afford anything, David. Sarah and David walk arm in arm down to the waves of the beach, and the film's original theme song begins to play.
Sung by Phoebe Cates.
Right.
When I'm with you, it's paradise. No place on earth could be so.
The closing song is sung by Cates, who also provides a couple songs next season for the Private School soundtrack. And the single actually charted in Italy and went on to be the second best-selling single of the year there. So that's Paradise.
Oof.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah.
The only entertaining thing about this was just being astonished every 5 seconds about the terrible choices they made about how to write the story.
It's just so repetitive. It's literally just, we went to a place, the guy found us. We went to another place, the guy found us. But then after that, it's, we stayed in the place and the guy found us there again, over and over again. And it's like, yeah, that's what's going to happen. If you don't move, he's going to find you in the place where you still were. Especially if you keep building, structures to indicate where you are.
Yeah. And you've only ever just hung out at water sources.
Right. Because you're organisms that need water. But yeah.
I'm just saying, like, these should be known locations to guys that scour the desert, right?
Yeah, but instead it's like 2 naked people making out, and then people on horses show up and scream at them, and back and forth for the whole movie. And there's nothing to it. And I'm not surprised that Columbia was like, you know what? Let's sue them. Because that's just blatantly, they're taking every scene from Blue Lagoon and putting it into a much worse movie.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
it's terrible.
The only thing they did right was casting Phoebe Cates, honestly, because she's insanely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so it follows the pattern of hiring Brooke Shields for the previous film, but still, it's like there's no story here. There's really nothing to it.
Well, and it's missing. I think it's missing all of the charm of Blue Lagoon too.
Right. Yeah.
There's the self-discovery stuff, and there's like the learning how to be independent, and like all of those things that I think are interesting about watching Blue Lagoon are just missing here. Like they go through the same motions, but there's no heart to it.
Yeah.
And also, they're already kind of adults.
Yeah.
I mean, he's already going to be going off to ministry school. Like these aren't.
That's not a coming of age thing.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Yeah. That's why I was asking, like, how old are they supposed to be? Because if he's going to go into the ministry, I imagine he has to be at least 16.
Yeah.
And
like in Blue Lagoon, they didn't know what was happening to their bodies, but I would believe if neither one of these characters was even a virgin. It's like they could very well have already had sex. Like she could already be a mom for all I know. Like it's 1823, but it's like it doesn't make any sense to have her be like, I don't know how to describe what's happening to my body right now. And it's like you do. You already know that.
Yeah, it's not like she clearly comes from wealth. So like she has she's somewhat of an education,
right?
Again, it's not like Blue Lagoon where, these kids are kids. They don't really know anything yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it got all like silly and goofy with the chimps and the huts and the coconut radios, and it's just like
the chimps really kill it for me because so much of that is just played for like it feels like it's literally shot for a television audience so that they can fade to commercial on a monkey with a fruit on its head doing a William Tell act. And it's like, no, this isn't, I can't take your movie seriously if you have a bunch of extended chimp
They
scenes.
literally had a blueprint to follow.
Yeah.
And they didn't do it right.
Right.
Like you just had to copy this movie exactly and you screwed it up.
Yeah.
Like they were looking at Blue Lagoon. It's like, you know what the worst parts about Blue Lagoon is? There's no other characters. So we need to have other like characters, like the bad guy who's chasing them, and he needs to be able to talk to somebody when he's not talking to her. So he talks to chimps.
Right.
It's like he always needs someone or something to do rather than just be a movie about survival.
Right. And that's the other crazy thing is that this shouldn't be a movie about just survival because they have a place in mind that they're trying to get to and they don't go there. And the only reason they don't go there is because they just decided that they're making a Blue Lagoon remake. Not because like they can't get to Damascus or they can't get to Alexandria. They just decided, hey, we found a beach. You remember that movie Blue Lagoon? Let's just do what they did and live here now.
Maybe this whole thing happens over the course of like 5-6 days. And they're just really...
You think he built that house in 5 or 6 days?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's like, like that's the only reason that this would make sense in terms of the guy chasing them consistently and how everything else sort of plays out is that it happens fast. The only thing that throws that timeline off is the stupid shit that they make.
Right. And the first thing he says when they get to paradise that first night is, if I could, I would stay here until forever or something like that. Where it's like literally implying, hey, let's live here. And that doesn't make sense for these two characters who, like, she has family that are waiting for her. She's trying to get out of this world.
Right. Yeah. They both, well, he says that, his parents were the only people he had, but for her, yeah, she has a place to go. And again, since it's 1823, word isn't going to get around that she's missing for months.
Long time.
And if that word does get out, it will be Geoffrey was killed by bandits in the desert, and we don't know where she went. It's like, oh, well, she was definitely killed then.
Yeah.
But they also don't see. To me, there would needed to be an element of like they do at first want to get to somewhere,
right?
But neither of them know anything about navigating except what Geoffrey told them would be follow the sun.
Right.
Like we're heading west, so in the morning away from the sun, in the evening towards the sun.
Right.
And that at least will get them to the Mediterranean.
Right.
But when they hit this body of water, which I thought was the Mediterranean.
Right, because it's huge and it goes the whole way to the horizon.
Yeah, so I was like, well, because I was looking at maps.
Right.
And there are large bodies of water, but they are all man-made, and they weren't made till way later.
Yeah.
So there is really nothing except that it could be, in my mind, except the Mediterranean or the Red Sea.
Yeah, but the implication of the film is that this is an enormous oasis that they found. That stretches beyond the horizon like it's a fucking Great Lake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't know what this was supposed to be. I didn't know why they're finding huge amounts of water in the desert all over the place.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
So then is that then you're saying that water is fresh water?
Yes.
Wow.
But it has a full coral reef and tropical fish in it.
As fresh water is wont to do.
Right. Is not wont to do. Yeah. So that's Paradise. I would say thumbs down, honestly.
Thumbs down. Yeah,
and for me to say thumbs down to a movie that has
that many
12
boobs.
nude scenes from Phoebe Cates, that tells you all you need to know about this film. Don't bother. What are we thinking Letterboxd?
I have it maybe even too high. I have it at 56 out of 71. It is below I Ought to Be in Pictures and above Partners.
I have mine at 62. Which is also above Partners, but below Death Wish 2.
I have it at 63, which is below National Lampoon's Movie Madness, and above Partners. No joke.
We all agree this movie is just slightly better than Partners.
If I had to look at something, Phoebe Cates over Ryan O'Neal any day. Our writer-director here was Stuart Gillard. This is his first time in the director's chair, though earlier this season we've seen his work as the screenwriter of If You Could See What I Hear. Prior to that, he'd written mostly for television, including episodes of Three's Company, Quark, and Mork and Mindy. Next season, he writes Spring Fever, and later he writes and directs A Man Called Sarge and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. He also directed Harland Williams' vehicle Rocket Man, and then transitioned back to television directing for credits on Charmed, One Tree Hill, the 90210 reboot, and Jane the Virgin. He also has directing credits on direct-to-video sequels to The Cutting Edge and War Games. The music here came from Paul Hoffert. Before this, he had scored H.G. Wells' adaptation The Shape of Things to Come and Firebird 2015 AD. After this, he scores the Hitchhiker TV series. The cinematographer here was Adam Greenberg. Before this, he lights Lemon Popsicle and so far on the show The Big Red One and Seed of Innocence. He's back this season to light The Last American Virgin, and later 10 to Midnight, Terminator, Once Bitten, Iron Eagle, La Bamba, Near Dark, 3 Men and a Baby, Alien Nation, Turner and Hooch, Ghost, Terminator 2, Sister Act, Toys, Dave, North, Junior, First Night, Eraser, Sphere, Rush Hour, Inspector Gadget, Collateral Damage, The Santa Claus 2, and Snakes on a Plane.
Wow, it's quite a variety, and a lot of repeat directors in there. I do like, though, that you said The Big Red One, and you had mentioned
that he's on both of them, yeah.
He's like, hey, I got a great place for us to film.
I've seen this before. The editor here was Howard Terrell. He previously edited on The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, The Munsters, and Emergency for television. After this, he edits T.J. Hooker, The Greatest American Hero, A-Team, and Hunter for television. Willie Aames played David. He was previously Fred Robinson in the mid-70s Swiss Family Robinson TV series. Presumably that's where he learned to make beach houses. Just prior to this, he'd appeared as Tommy Bradford in 109 episodes of 8 is Enough. He's back later this season in Zapped. He voices Hank the Ranger in the mid-80s Dungeons & Dragons cartoon. He's Buddy Lembeck in 126 episodes of Charles in Charge. And he's also Bible Man in 23 episodes of the Bible Man TV series.
The Bible Man TV series.
Yeah, it's like a superhero. I think that's what...
Is that a real thing?
Yeah, I think that's the character that Nathan Fillion is playing a parody of in James Gunn's Super, that he's like a religious character superhero. Phoebe Cates was Sarah. Some of the film's advertising made the claim that Cates was offered this role after being discovered by producers at Studio 54. No idea if that's true at all. This was her first feature film credit. She's back later this season for her better-known role in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Next season, she shows up in Private School, and later Gremlins 1 and 2, Drop Dead Fred, Princess Caribou, and The Anniversary Party alongside her husband, actor Kevin Kline. In 2015, she reprised her Gremlins role as a voice in the LEGO Dimensions video game. Tuvia Tavi played the Jackal. He's back next season in the not dissimilar film Sahara. Richard Curnock played Geoffrey, didn't recognize much else from him. Neil Vipond, or Vipond, played Reverend. We've seen him so far as Dr. Clegg in Phobia. He plays another Clegg in Star Trek Voyager episode Natural Law as a flying instructor. His most recent IMDb credit is for playing another priest on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Aviva Marks played Rachel. She shows up again in A Man Called Sarge from the same director. Yosef Shiloch played Ahmed. He's also back for Sahara next year, and later Iron Eagle, Rambo 3, and Night Terrors. I think that's everything for Paradise. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, you can find all our socials at linktree/vintagevideopod. And if you really like the show, maybe you should join our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast for access to all our monthly 70s reviews and a hand in choosing next month's film. Patrons are currently choosing between Cooley High, Doc Savage the Man of Bronze, Jaws, Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, Love and Death, Nashville, Race with the Devil, Rollerball, and The Wilby Conspiracy for a 50th anniversary review next month. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Conan the Barbarian, which IMDb describes like so. A powerful warrior seeks to avenge the genocide of his people and the murder of his parents at the hands of a snake cult.